Welcome to the Zweig Letter Podcast. I'm Randy Wilburn. Today's episode comes from a special series we recorded at Zweig Group's ElevateAEC conference in San Antonio, Texas. For those who aren't familiar with ElevateAEC, it's Zweig Group's annual gathering of AEC industry leaders. 3 days of keynotes, breakout sessions, awards, and candid conversations about the future of architecture, engineering, and construction. The content we captured was exceptional, and we wanted to share it with a wider audience. So whether you're listening to a keynote address or a breakout session, you're getting insights from the people shaping the industry. And if you want to learn more about attending a future ElevateAEC conference, visit zweiggroup.com. Now, let's dive in.
Welcome to the Zweig Letter Podcast, putting architectural, engineering, planning, and environmental consulting advice and guidance in your ear. Zweig Group's team of experts have spent more than 3 decades elevating the industry by helping AEP and environmental consulting firms thrive. And these podcasts deliver invaluable management, industry, client, marketing, and HR advice directly to you, free of charge. The Zweig Letter Podcasts, elevating the design industry one episode at a time.
Okay, welcome to our Speed of Business Luncheon, where we are going to focus on innovation. And I mean real innovation, not the LinkedIn version that so many talking heads are carrying on about, not the core values version where so many firms call themselves innovative, yet have very little proof of any real innovative practice. Real innovation is the creation and implementation of new ideas, products, services, or processes that deliver meaningful value by solving problems or meeting needs in ways that are significantly better than existing alternatives. It is really the antithesis of this is the way we've always done it. Our lunch program is brought to you by the person and organization I consider the foremost authority on real innovation, KP Reddy. Now, KP is the founder and CEO of Shadow Ventures, a seed stage technology investment firm, and KP Reddy Company, which was formerly Shadow Partners. He is a globally recognized authority in AEC environments, AI, robotics, automation, mobile applications, and cloud computing. KP is a civil engineer by background, is a frequent lecturer at the Georgia Institute of Technology, and is a sought-after subject matter expert. Most recently, KP's experience with AI led him to publish his latest book, Creating the Intangible Enterprise. His keynote on the future of innovation in AEC should help us envision a future where the speed of business accelerates and AEC becomes an even better investment. So please help me welcome KP Reddy to the Elevate stage.
You tell Chad you love Metallica, and you get to listen to Metallica a bunch. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about what we've been working on. And I think this narrative keeps coming up, right? I heard it in the last panel with my colleague Frank, which is, what about our clients? What about the market? And it's interesting that because our primary form of communication with our clients is RFPs and responding to RFPs, we never get to ask a lot of great questions outside of a procurement cycle. So what we really looked at was, let's go spend time with owners. So I went and spent time with a bunch of your customers, lots of large owners, municipalities, DOTs, et cetera. And we spent a bunch of time talking to them about what's working and what's not working. The resounding feedback from them is, we hate working with the AEC industry. They are a pain in the butt. They tell us what to do. We are not the customer. We feel they make us feel like we're the vendor. They don't add a lot of value. They're a necessary evil. Do you guys believe you're a necessary evil? That's what they think. So we talked to a bunch of owners. And what they said was, all this technology, and I always joke around, I wrote a book on BIM about 13 years ago. Nobody should be buying it, yet I still have sales. because BIM is dead. No one cares about BIM. That's an old construct. But what they said resoundingly is nothing has changed. All this technology, all this innovation, at the end of the day, our projects are not on time, they are not on budget, and the quality actually is a question mark. So why are we doing all this? And one of my colleagues did a deep study on the design and building of the Empire State Building, and his conclusion was, in today's age, we could not meet the metrics. We could not meet cost, we could not meet delivery schedules, that they did it better back in the 50s than we're actually doing it now. So that's the premise. So we did about 101 interviews. We created a thing called the Integrated Owners Forum. We got all the top owners in the world to start showing up and just ask very free-form questions. Everything about how do you feel about hiring architects? How does that process work for you? How do you hire contractors? What do you think about bid? What do you think about CM at risk and design build? Asked them all the questions and said, you are the customer. We need to serve you the way you want to be served. And that was it was weird because they said, no one's ever asked us that. No one's ever asked us what we want. We've been told, draft an RFP, put a bid document together, do plans and specs. And so I just kind of said, let's get back to first principles. How do we want to do things different? Let's stop iterating on an old construct and let's just start over. So we started to really explore their thinking. And my team spent a lot of time on this stuff. I wish they would have used AI, but they spent way too much time. One of the categories in here that we spent the most time with was actually some of the building product manufacturers that said there's a massive disconnect between how they think about innovating the next HVAC system, the next electrical distribution system, and their connectivity to the people that design and specify with their products, that there's a massive disconnect. In fact, they said that it's hard for them to innovate because they have to convince you to specify it. They have to convince you to design with it, and it's not worth it. Like, why innovate something new if the industry's not going to adopt something new? And the owners don't know better, right? Some owners do. When I'm dealing with Intel or Genentech or Meta and all that, they're a little bit more savvy. But the local K through 12 system doesn't understand what the latest system is from Schneider Electric. So this was kind of our nutshell. And anyone that wants this report, you can just email me, kp@kpreddy.co. I'll have someone send it to you. But this is what we found out. Turns out owners admitted to us. They don't know what they're doing. They're like, just like you guys can't hire the right people, can't find the right people, guess what? Neither can we. We go build a manufacturing facility for 3 years. We burn out our people, then they quit. We rarely have people on our side stay for more than one capital program because it's brutal. It's a hard business, and so they end up quitting and they go somewhere else. So they admitted, we don't have the capability. They're like, budgets and schedules are just kind of novelty. We don't really understand what's going on. The other thing is they said, look, as much as we spend time on design and thinking, we have this problem where there's two silos. There's the CapEx buyer and there's the OpEx buyer. That the industry designs and builds buildings, and they can't tell us what the operating costs will be. That's like going out and buying a car, not knowing what the maintenance costs will be, not knowing what your insurance costs will be, not knowing what your miles per gallon are. And they're like, we do this with billion-dollar purchases. We are going in blind. Practically criminal, if you ask me. So the data aspect. They're like, all this data is in silos. Nobody seems to care our opinion on the data. It's our data. By the way, every one of our owners believes what you guys think is your data, they believe is their data. I'm not going to argue. That's up to the lawyers. But that is their belief system. So you can either say, hey, we're not going to share data and argue about it, or you can say, in this transparent world, you say, actually, it is your data. In fact, we're happy to help you monetize that data. We'll help you use it better. We'll make it usable for you. Tell us what you want to do with the data. And I thought that was pretty fascinating. This whole idea of BIM, all we're doing is rehashing 2D into 3D. There is no data and nobody cares. There's so much contractual misalignment. In other words, We get paid a percentage of the project. If the project increases in scope and price, we actually get paid more. So there is no benefit to delivering cheaper, better, faster to the AC industry. There's no bonus involved. And so we saw like massive, massive misalignment. And there's misalignment, and there's actually really opposite alignment, right? In other words, the benefit of a bad project actually might benefit the AEC industry more if it goes poorly financially. Once again, this is what they said. We asked for specific instances. They shared them with us. So I'm not saying it's 100%. But we have to remember there's facts and there's feelings. These are feelings that are rooted in facts, right? They've had these experiences. The lack of information, can't get as-built, nobody seems to be working for us. One of them said, I love working with architects that talk about the building being their building. There's like, it's not our building. You didn't write $1 billion check. It's not your building, sir. I paid. And then how to communicate, which is even becoming harder. Oh, let's set up Procore. Let's do this. Let's do email. It's gotten worse and worse. In fact, all this technology that we have, how many of you feel like we're communicating better? Right? Now we have all these Zoom notes flooding our inbox that we don't have time to read, and everybody's dropping it into AI to hopefully make some sense of it. So this was kind of what they came up with, which we found extremely fascinating. So this was kind of the conclusion, right? So we said, okay, great, let's put our analytical hat on and said, we know it's broken. Where are some of the choke points? And a lot of it came down to scope. It turns out your customer doesn't know what they want. And it turns out we tend to ask them a series of questions and iterations along the way to help them define what they want. And it was funny is they admitted it. They're like, yeah, we're a big part of the problem. We think we know what we want, but we don't actually. And so that iteration that we go through with the AE firms costs us time and money. And when our boss comes and yells at us about why things are taking too long, well, we blame the AE firm. It's easy enough, right? But they did admit that they don't actually know what they want. So the idea of developing better requirements, deeper requirements in a detailed way, and understanding scheduling. And, we used to joke around. I used to do manufacturing facilities, so we'd have a job trailer full of P6 printouts of the schedule, right? And we always used to joke around, the minute we print it, it's wrong, right? And so a lot of what they're asking for on the scheduling is not so much, what's the schedule, but what are the variables? What's going to hurt us on the schedule? And guess what? There's 3 different AI weather sources now. We have so much data that we can work with to actually start extrapolating risk in schedule, risk in budgets, and things like that. The firm selection, how many of you like responding to RFPs? Right? It's a lot of fun. Now we have AI doing it for us. That's going to make it better. How many of us actually believe that they're hiring and selecting based on QBS, on qualifications? Right? So the clients, the owners started to understand, like, hey, we're actually part of the problem, which I thought was great. It was very big of them to admit that they were part of the problem. So that's the thing that we think is an opportunity with AI. And I'll get into like why AI even matters with any of this stuff. A lot of the overall iteration of design and them not understanding what decisions are being made. They don't know what they're signing up for. We say, hey, we think we should go this direction. They say, okay, well, if that's what you think, you're the expert. What they didn't tell you is like, oh, that's probably going to cost us more in energy costs. That's going to cost us more in maintenance. Right? They don't necessarily understand the downstream implications of any decision they make. And then, of course, everybody loves to blame the contractor. Some of my best friends are contractors. And once again, it's back to lack of information. Everybody know this thing? Why does this exist? Why does the iteration of design exist? Why don't we design on day one to shop drawing level? Right? We do this because we started off sketching on vellum and drawing, and the cost of change to make any change was so expensive that we decided we need to iterate, which made a lot of sense. Right? Let's iteratively go through the process with the customer, make iterative changes, make iterative decisions, avoid a lot of rework. I was working on a big project, and my client was a big structural engineering firm. And I went to a meeting with them, and the architect said, so where are we on the design, on the structural design? Structural engineer said, yeah, we're on track. Didn't show them anything. And I said, do you have anything? We haven't even started. And I'm why haven't you started? If we made design changes every time the architect and owner changed their mind, we would be out of business. So we just kind of sit in meetings and wait till they iterate whatever it is they want to iterate, and we just wait till they get done with their noise, and then we start designing. Because if we design on the first meeting, man, we'll lose all our money on these projects. And I found that pretty fascinating, right? So if you think about it, we've gone through this cycle because the rate of change, because we lacked a lot of technology, was so slow. Making a change meant, let's print out another set of drawings, let's go, sketch out an erase on paper on vellum. Then we went to CAD, and of course that's, for some reason, we thought the rate of change was also very difficult. But a lot of this is we don't have enough information, right? We're also feeding real-time information from the customer, from codes and everything else. And as we get further along, we get more and more information. And so you think about it, we draw a box, and then we start coloring in little pieces of it and drawing in the pieces of it, and that takes time and energy. So this is kind of where we've been, right? So I did a small stint, 18 months with Frank Geary, to run his technology group. Frank had a belief system that you did drawings to a shop-level drawing. And his point was, the dumb contractor won't know what to do with my designs. So if we don't tell them exactly what to do, the project will go over budget. And so in his team, we had material scientists, we had structural engineers, we had lots of people. But we delivered a full set of shop drawing level drawings to the contractor. A lot of people told him, hey, that's a lot of liability, which we can talk about a little bit. There is definitely a narrative whenever a customer asks you for something, if your first response is, nope, can't do it, it's too much liability, versus the answer being, yes, but let me take a look at it and let's see how we can capture that liability. Maybe we can do a joint capture on the liability, but let's understand what the implications of it is. That was one of the biggest feedback that the owners gave us, was that our industry says no a lot. They tell us they can't do stuff. And it's not that they can't do stuff, it's that they don't want to do stuff. We also asked them questions like, would you be willing to pay more? They said, absolutely. If they can start demonstrating their methodology, how they create value, how it'll impact the project, happy to talk to them about a different fee structure. The funny thing is, they're like, we're the customer, and we have to go buy AIA contract docs. They're like, isn't that fascinating? We sign our vendor's contract. We're the customer. They should be signing our contract. They should work the way we want to work. And you're starting to see that with some of the super scalers that have realized that I don't want to operate under the existing construct. I'm going to develop my own way, right? When Elon Musk, whatever you think about him, decides to build a data center in Memphis and just breaks all the rules and does whatever he wants and delivers a data center in 9 weeks, one part of the narrative is wow, he got something done in 9 weeks that the industry would have never done in 9 weeks. Other people say, well, he broke all the rules. We have to live by the rules. He got to break all the rules, and he's paying $1 million a day fine for breaking all the rules. Funny thing is, he doesn't care about the $1 million a day fine. It's built into the business model. So where are we going from this, and how do we start to think about it? So Frank asked a question about agentic AI. I'm not going to get too deep into agentic AI. I'm around all day today. If anyone wants to talk about agentic AI, we can talk about it. But this is how we see the future of what we're doing, that everything is kind of tech-enabled, a lot more integration. I talked yesterday about some of the things that I've built. One of the things that I wrote up was kind of a 10-page academic paper that I gave to all these VCs, which was the death and reemergence of the master builder. And why did the master builder go away? What was the construct of that? And how do we bring it back? Because the net result of that was positive. So as we think about how do we reemerge as the new master builder as an industry and get rid of the silos, these are some of the key points that we really believe. I say, it's funny, Chad's talking about LinkedIn. I'm very active on LinkedIn. On my profile, it says AI design buildings, robots build buildings. My timeline is 5 years. I might be wrong on my timeline. I will not be wrong on the end state. The end state is the right state. And a lot of it's because of what we're talking to our owners about. We have owners, we have some companies that do fully automated drywall and painting and finishing. When I tell the owners about that, they're like, nobody told us that. So as owners continue to get educated and exposed to these technologies, they're going to start asking a lot of questions. So how do we start looking at that? The entire model, the software model, I know there's a lot of software vendors out there. We kind of believe software is kind of dead as a way to go buy software. It's really more software is just embedded in how we do things. We think that a lot of this is shifting just how people think about executing work. I work with some very large subcontractors that invest heavily in R&D to deliver a different way. And so we think this is how the shift away from headcount as a growth metric to more like how do we think about project delivery, how do we think about project profitability. I'm working with a large NFL team, I mean, they're all large, but on a new stadium. And I said, like, hey, as a consultant, can we help you do better? Can we guarantee the outcomes, the budget, the schedule? And if we guarantee it, I want to cut. I'm like, oh, you want a bonus? I'm like, no, I want to own part of the team, man. Like, that's what I want. He's like, well, I can't let you own part of the team. However, I could give you a bonus if you can help us do it faster. So the thinking around even the financial models and the business models is even starting to change to more of a developer mindset, to more of a skin in the game mindset. I think, someone's asked me a couple questions about DOTs and how do I see that going. There's a reason why we're seeing a lot of public-private partnerships. There's a reason for that. And those are massive, massive economic opportunities for the industry. Unfortunately, the asset allocator is probably getting paid on equity and upside, and they're going to pay you hourly rate, and they're going to try to negotiate your rate down and not give you a piece of the action. Because I'll tell you what, long term, in terms of how you think about growth and economic growth, owning part of the asset is probably a better move, and these developers are not going to let you in on the action. So how do we think about this? If you imagine, which you don't have to imagine, we're actually building a lot of these, how do you think about getting information out of the owner, out of the customer, right? We ask a series of questions, we maybe have some process, they give us some feedback, we go away, we analyze that, then we have more questions, and we go back to them. What if instead the requirements process was much more conversational with an AI bot based on all your information? So you could have a one-day meeting with the customer and actually understand exactly what they need. Customer says, hey, I want to build a 350-bed hospital. Fantastic. What are you thinking about surgical centers? Oh, I hadn't thought about that. Well, I think we need 5. Okay, great. What's your typical footprint for a surgical center? What type of equipment? Oh, we're going to put an x-ray machine in there. We're going to put a robotic surgery thing. Great, which model? Right? Because the AI has access to all this information on the front end and can continue to prompt the customer real time to answer all the questions. At the end of this, now you actually know the requirements. You've actually learned a lot about what the customer needs, which means you can push all of those requirement gathering instead of being iterative, and along this entire long process, we're getting as much information up front as possible. This is something we've already done, right? So we've already looked at this. How do these requirements fit into design, right? Design is about taking a lot of set of variables from the customer and the business case. This is another interesting thing. We ran a model where we looked at a new hospital, and we looked at the staffing and the revenue model and the big business plan for the new hospital, and we fed it into our system to understand how that would inform design. What would be the ROI of that new surgical center? Do you actually need more surgical centers based on the demographic data you're giving us, based on the certificate of need data? So we're pulling all this data, and the owner's saying, wow, it turns out you're right. We do need an extra surgical center. Our fancy consultants at McKinsey missed that, right? So this is the type of iteration you're having up front. So if you think about it, if you have all the requirements up front, you now have all the data to push into the agentic design. So now you're designing very quickly, on the fly, and guess what? If the customer changes their mind, that's fine. It's quick. But we're also designing to shop drawing level. We're also designing with an idea that is the product available. We typically specify this HVAC system. We're pinging the manufacturer to say, does that exist still? Are the performance specs still the same? Is it going to be available based on the predicted schedule of my project? Will it be available? Because if it's not available, which if you're dealing with the superscalers, that's one of the biggest problems is product availability, right? Systems availability. We're actually designing and getting real-time data to inform the design and make those changes. Why do we have RFIs? Requests for information? Because we didn't provide enough information. We didn't give enough prescriptive information. So that's what we're starting to see there. Tech-enabled construction services, is it going to be robots on the job site? Not one of them. But we're already thinking about how do we do orchestration? What does the superintendent of the future look like? And is it a set of cameras that are actually sending data to all the different robots on a job site? I think I talked about it yesterday. We have an automated grading system, right? Grading equipment. We now have automated painters and drywallers. We also have prefab that's coming. So not everything's going to be on the job site. And you have a lot of other interesting things that are being built every day. The cost of robotics are getting cut like 5% a month, and it's just getting cheaper and cheaper. So we're going to have access to the type of robotics that only very large industries have had in the past, like automotive. Autonomous construction, big part of that. Whether it's prefab offsite or whether it's the offsite stuff was super interesting. We talked to a large healthcare provider, and they said, we found a company that does prefab patient rooms. It's a company called Blocks, I think, out of Birmingham. But the problem is we didn't talk to them until after we realized we may not meet the budget and the schedule. And they said, we still need lead times. Why didn't your architect design with us in mind? Well, because the architect wanted to design the rooms, they wanted to design the rooms instead of thinking kit of parts. So now that owner now realizes, like, when I start a project day one, I'm going to look at who builds prefab patient rooms, and I'm going to force my architect to design with modularity in mind. And you're seeing this across the board. It's not just healthcare. It's a lot of different markets. Actually, just yesterday, Schneider Electric and Compass Data Centers announced their pre-manufactured data center in a box. So between Schneider and Compass, they're just going to ship you a data center, right? You're also seeing it in other markets where they're realizing that prefab and offsite is really important. The last piece that I think is really important to customers is facilities management. Great, you guys built the house, you designed it, you built it, you left. Now I have to live with it for the next 20 to 50 years. We're working with a large hospital project. They called us in and they said, we hired one of the top architecture firms. They seem to fail to realize that within 5 years, we'll probably have robots in our hospital. And they didn't design with the idea of coexistence of robots, humanoids or otherwise, in the space living with humans. Seems like a big miss since we probably won't tear down this hospital for 50 years. It's not going anywhere. Can we all agree that within 50 years we'll have robots working with us? So you have to design a building that has robots working with us, that has that optionality. So why build these types of service platforms? So as you think about AI, once again, not a feature, not a tool necessarily, part of an equation. How do you think about building your AI service platform and rethink your business model? Because guess what? If you have the right conversations with your customers, they want a different business model. I'm going to skip through on time. So a lot of what we're looking at is we've built decision to support systems. We're building requirements gathering systems, prefab, agentic design, and systems to do the entire life cycle. It's early innings, but we're still we're on path. So I think I'm out of time. One of the things we do for the industry, and one of the things we really start to think about is how do you assess where you are and where you're going? I posted something a couple weeks ago on change management, The change management is made up. It doesn't apply. Change management implies that you know what the end state is. We do not know what the end state is. And if you constantly focus on managing to an end state that is probably fictional, you will probably lose. So a lot of like even what Frank was talking about up here earlier is really about how you think about assessing where you are and where you're going. Thank you very much. Hopefully I didn't ruin your lunch. Apparently I did that for a couple people yesterday. But with that, we're going to move on to our AEC Innovator Awards. I think they're going to cue something up. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks for tuning in to the Zweig Letter Podcast. We hope that you can be part of elevating the industry and that you can apply our advice and information to your daily professional life. For a free digital subscription to the Zweig Letter, please visit thezweigletter.com/subscribe to gain more wisdom and inspiration, in addition to information about leadership, finance, HR, and marketing your firm. Subscribe today.